What's up YouTube, RaincloudGaming here. Been meaning to do a pacifism commentary for a while now. I've noticed some people find my videos by searching for pacifism tips, so this could be useful to some people. I think pacifism's a pretty simple, intuitive game that you get better at mainly by just playing it a lot. You need to get a feel for the game, for the way the blues move, for the randomness of the gates. But at the same time I think there are a couple of things that help me to get better at least. So I'm not trying to pretend to be an expert at this game or best, anything like that. But I do think that it could be helpful to spell out some of the things that have helped me along the way. In this first episode, I'm going to talk a little bit about ways of approaching gates. Now, in pacifism mode, gates require special attention, partly because they're the only random element in this mode. Obviously, you control where your ship goes, and the blues follow your ship, so indirectly you control where blues go, apart from their spawns, whereas the gates move randomly. Additionally, of course, gates are the only weapon you have in this game, and it was changing the way I approach gates that had the biggest effect on improving my score dramatically. I'd say above any other piece of advice I could give. Changing the way I move towards the gates and move around them. When I first started playing this game, I fell immediately into a quite conservative or even short-sighted playstyle, which I imagine is quite common. In this manner of playing, I would move directly from gate to gate, with no real concern for where the blue diamonds were in relation to the gate. I just want to survive a little longer, so I'd move to the gate, I'd take whatever explosion I could get, take whatever geom I could get, and then move on. And that's a natural way of playing, where the prerogative is merely to survive. But it's quite a passive way of playing, which isn't the most efficient way of getting geom, and therefore of getting points. What I want to discuss now is a more effective way of dealing with the gates. Now, in order to get a big score, you need to have a big geom count, a big multiplier to make your job easier to get that score. To get a lot of geom, you need to be creating a lot of damage on the blues to release geom that you can then collect. And to do that, you need to know your weaponry. Now, the gates, as I said, are the only weapon you have. And the thing to remember about the gates, the key thing, is that they do not create one uniform explosion when you go through them. They actually create two explosions, one at each end of the gate. And that accounts for one of the most annoying ways of dying in this game, which is where you fly through a gate and you see the explosion that's happened, that's registered, and yet you've been killed by a diamond that's waiting on the other side of the gate. Now, the reason it's not been killed is because the two explosions, one at each end of the gate, haven't reached it yet. Doesn't matter how near it is, and oftentimes it'll be right in front of you, very close to the gate, but it's not been destroyed. And that tells us something very important about the way this game works. If you look at the way I move my ship on this run, which is actually a billion run, you'll notice I often take quite big detours when I'm approaching the blues. I'm not going straight towards them. And the reason I'm doing this is so the blues will follow me on that detour. And my aim when I'm doing that is to get the blues so that they'll be as close as possible to either end of the gates when I explode them. Because it's when they're clustered around the orange bits, which are effectively the bombs on each end of the gate, that's where the damage happens. You can think of it like a sword that you want to thrust right into the heart of the blues. And that's where the damage happens. And when you're on a big run and you've got a massive cloud of blues following you, the worst thing that can happen is when the gates move in a way that means you can't position them on the end of one of the gates. And you keep being in a situation where you just need to fly through them, and they're near to the grey part of the gate. They're facing it head on. They're not being poked in the eye by one of the orange bits. Because it's landing so little damage compared to when it's right on the tip of one of the gates. And not only do you want it to be close to the tip, ideally you want it to be overlapping. You want the gate as far into the cloud as possible. So really, the explosion will actually take place inside the cloud. And that way it just creates so much damage that you get a lot of geom released, and it creates quite a lot of space too. So you don't need to run away even. You're creating space in an offensive manner, not in a passive way by running away, but in an aggressive way. And so that's really what I wanted to just describe in this first commentary. It's quite a simple point, but it's my first ever commentary, so I want to keep it quite simple. And that is, just don't fly directly from gate to gate. Think about the sort of route you can take, and how much time you've got, how much space you've got to take a detour that will position the blues on the end of one of the gates, rather than facing one of the grey bits kind of head on. So that's pretty much it for this first episode. If this has been helpful for anyone, please let me know and I'll do some more. If anyone's got any preferences, what you'd like to get any advice about, I may be able to help. My highest score is 3 billion, so I've gotten a lot better lately at this game, but it took me a long while to get past the billion stage. Maybe I'll do a video on trying to break that barrier, or maybe on some more fundamental things. So if anyone's got any suggestions, please let me know.